Hey everyone, and welcome to season 2 of Building It Up with Bertelsmann. I am your host, Ankur Variku, and with me today is someone who's helped define what furniture has meant for all of India, Ambareesh Murty. He's the founder and CEO of Pepperfry, and he has indistinguishably built what I would call the most trusted and valuable furniture brand in this country. He started off as the eBay country manager, in fact, way before in Cadbury, where he, in his admission, learned the most from. He also served as the vice chairman of the IMAI. And then he and Ashish started Pepperfry because they felt that the market was really big, unorganized, and there was still a lot to do. Thank you so much, Ambrish, for being part of this episode of Building It Up with Bertelsmann. It's a privilege to have you. You have built a terrific vertical e-commerce company, and you've done it for several years now. But it's a really hard category to pick. Like furniture does not intuitively come to mind. It's a complex logistical nightmare. Custom furniture becomes another problem. What got you into furniture into the first place?
Taking a leaf out of this, I wish I could say that there was some massive reason to do this, but I guess all businesses take from an entrepreneur's personality.
Yeah.
And I am a homebody.
Okay.
I don't really. I'm the kind of guy who on a weekend doesn't go out party.
Okay.
I sit nice, quietly, read a book. So I love my sofa, I love my lamps, and I always figured that we didn't have enough of choice when it came to really doing up your home. The other, of course, are the good reasons, the large market and so on. So I think a combination of all of this and the fact that I love the category that I operate in suggested that I should, be in this space, and therefore I picked furniture.
Awesome. And what I love about how you've navigated through this journey is you've genuinely taken the stand of a market leader, defining the standards that this industry needs to operate by. What I'd love to focus on today is the entire way you've gone about building your omnichannel experience for the customer. Go back to the days when you were purely online. People are clicking and buying and getting delivered and so on. What made you realize that possibly was not the only thing that the customer needed?
Okay, I guess there were two fundamental principles that we built our business on.
Yeah.
The first principle was the fact that there were, when Ashish and I, my co-founder, we were starting up, there were three words we'd put on the wall, so to speak. The first word was Indian, the second word was honest, and the third word was fun. And we said that we wanted to build a truly Indian business. We wanted to be honest with everybody in all our interactions, and we wanted to have fun along the way. So what that kind of did was that it also actually decided our name. So Pepper is something that has been famous for ages.
Yeah.
It's the reason why all of the trade routes from the West got discovered into India. It's also very honest spice, and
Correct.
the fry comes when you do the tadka, and therefore pepper fry. Right?
Nice.
So what Indian Honest and Fun decided for us was that we would think about approaching markets fairly laterally, right? So we wouldn't potentially do the straight and narrow. We would figure out as to what are the other ways we can actually access customers. The second principle that we built the business on was the fact that I truly believe that it's the same customer. So she could be on a mobile phone at some point in time, she could be on a laptop at another point in time, or she could be walking down a high street or going to a mall. And therefore, it's my duty as a business to engage with her in whichever way she wants to engage with me. And so therefore, in my mind, omni-channel isn't really a choice.
Sure.
Omni-channel is inevitable.
One message already that someone can take away, it's the fact that customer segmentation is looked upon as this necessary thing to do. But in my opinion, what's necessary is not customer segmentation, but use case segmentation.
Yep.
Because it's the same customer that navigates.
Yeah.
Like in our case, it could be someone who's deal hungry at some point of time, but looking for really high quality at the other end. And that's what you also
absolutely. I mean, it's otherwise if you make these fairly tight choices and you say I'm only going to serve this person and not serve this person, it's almost like an entrepreneur is playing God and really
taking a moral high ground.
I mean, that's in my mind that's not the duty of a business. The duty of a business is to grow. To take a leaf out of Gordon Gekko's book or movie or line is greed is good. And I think it's important for businesses to grow, and therefore,
So let's go back to the first store.
Sure.
I'm sure it was not an easy decision, as easy as you make it out to be, and kudos for you to that. But the fact that you're an online brand, you set out to be an online platform, and now you're going almost crazy by saying we'll open up a physical store before anyone in this country has done that. How was that even imagined? What were the pitfalls that you watched out for? How did you go about doing it? And more importantly, how did you figure that was the right thing for the business over a period of time?
So opened it as a pilot. And that's actually a great way to approach a new thing.
And which
right?
was the city?
Mumbai.
Okay, all right, so
And,
it's
and we
home
opened
ground.
it right below our office.
Okay.
And we said, if nothing else works out, at least it'll be a great a place for us to go interact with customers, get some research done, and so on.
Very nice.
So the way we started was we opened this first store. We had a fairly clear idea of how we wanted it to look. We had a fairly clear idea that we never wanted to sell anything from these stores.
Okay, so
we
experience
so
centers.
they had to be showrooms / experience
Sure.
centers. We had a fairly clear idea as to what the look would be, and the way we built it, we said, okay, what happens if people don't walk in and they don't want to come to an experience center set up by Pepperfry? It's fine. At least we'll have category managers go there and work out of the store. We can have marketing folks going in there and work out of the store. So I guess the way we sold it to ourselves was that it's low risk.
Okay.
Right? And we opened it as a pilot. And the moment we opened it, I think this was December of 2014, we saw great response.
Wow.
We saw folks wanting to engage with the products. We saw customers walking in. We saw customers coming, telling us great stories of houses they'd done up with Pepperfry products in the past.
Nice.
And we were just a 3-year-old brand or
Yeah.
2-year-old brand at that time. And then we opened our second one, which is actually, I guess, our biggest store now, which is the Indiranagar 100 Feet Road store,
Bangalore,
and which we opened in April the next year, so about 3-4 months from then. And we never looked back because these just took off.
So this not only served as a great way for you to extend the distribution medium, it also in some way became a customer acquisition channel.
Yes, but not in numbers.
Okay.
So the way we've always thought about it is these help us build trust.
Sure.
So our experience stores, because we don't sell from them, they effectively clear the trust threshold in a fairly high involvement category. And I think that's the core reason for our stores to exist. It's not as acquisitions, it's not for fly traps. I mean, they're not fly traps, etc., etc. They are fundamentally to build trust. One of the interesting things, is that that even though we have so many stores, just about 30% of our business actually comes from people who've gone into a store in the last 60 days. So that means that 70% of our business actually continues to be entirely online. Yeah. The other aspect is even those who go to stores, 85% of them, when they eventually buy something on Pepperfry,
they buy it online.
Don't have a product from the store in their carts. So it's not as if they're buying, you have a lot of these things about touch and feel and so on. No. That's not the reason behind the stores. That's not trust. How customers are experiencing it. It's trust.
I love that. And particularly in a low trust economy such as ours, this is the equivalent of a TV ad of sorts, right? When you see a TV ad on a company, you suddenly feel it company bahut badi hai, I have to trust it. It's the equivalent of that.
Absolutely.
The other big thing that you did before it was anyway cooler than what it is today is to start the marketplace model, right? Which is truly to say, I will not have inventory, I will not stock, I will not store, and I will have this very nice superfluous platform of vendors from one side and customers. Like, what got you to consider that piece?
I figured that I was building a business for scale. And as you look to build a business for scale, it's very important that you always keep your business inventory light. And let me give you an example. The first couple of years, I think we got a lot of brickbats for the fact that we didn't carry inventory. Our delivery timelines were longer than of competitors in our space, etc. Because we never kept the inventory with us, right? And it would have been easier if we had done an inventory-based business. I would have been shipping stuff faster. For the first couple of years, there would have been, I would have made greater margins. My processes didn't need to be as complicated in the sense that, I didn't need to worry about getting products from a merchant and then shipping it out to a customer. I would have just done it out of my warehouse. I could have done things like offered COD, which, incidentally, we don't offer. And, all of that would have been easier. The issue would have been 3 years from then, and which is what we realized, right? So, which is what we were banking on. As you look to scale your business, if you are truly looking to build a mammoth business, you need variety, right? One of the things that's curious about the furniture and home interior space is that there is almost no Pareto. So it's like you typically businesses have a bell curve, right? So 80% of your business comes from 20% of the SKUs that you have. But in furniture and home interiors, there is no bell curve. So which means that in order to truly serve a large market segment, you need to have a large width of variety. Now, you can't do variety when you're in an inventory business. I mean, that becomes really tricky. So what we wanted to set ourselves up for was being able to provide customers tons of variety, We obviously knew that we would not be able to do that out of inventory. So therefore, we created systems and processes around a marketplace where we could provide the same degree of experience to customers, but without having inventory or behind it, right? And that's what's resulted in scale, because now what I realized then was I could serve multiple segments of customers without having to worry about, okay, am I niching myself in? Is the business not going to scale? And I think that was the core reason behind going after the marketplace model.
The other piece, which is always, at least as a customer, is when I think of furniture, I almost think of custom. I want my furniture my way. And you are particularly different in the fact that you don't do a lot of custom. That's my understanding. Did that mean saying no to some customer choices, or did it mean that customers actually had so much of variety that their custom fit into some standard product?
So that was the principle. I mean, I said, okay, a person would look for a custom couch if they didn't get enough choices in couches by themselves or sofas. So if I were to provide you 2,000 sofas to select from, odds are whatever you want is going to be already available. So the principle was you provide so much variety that the customer would not need to go custom, right? The other thing on custom, and we dabbled in it from time to time, right? The entire principle, the entire thing about customers, customers are sweethearts. They, are great and they're always kings and queens. However, very often they wouldn't know what they truly want, right? So you might have this vision of what you expect a cabinet to be like, and you could describe it quite clearly. But eventually, when it comes out exactly to the specs that you laid out, it might be a lot different than what you had thought it would be. So it's that mera wala cream problem, right? And I do not know, when you're building a business to scale, whether that's a part of the experience that you can actually cater. I mean, you can actually do something about. So better not to be in that segment. And that's the decision we made.
The other piece is around vertical e-commerce. We've had some really well-established horizontal players, the Amazons and Flipkarts of the world, and then they also have a furniture category. They also have a XYZ category. How do you look at that? And how do you think that the customer looks at it?
So I think the customer has a lot of value for specialists, especially when it comes to high involvement categories. It's a parallel that always comes to mind is when you have a cold, you go to the general practitioner who's right next to your house. But if you, unfortunately might have broken a leg, you'd go to an orthopedic, right? Because there is a value to the specialization. It's a far higher involvement. And I think the customer in a high involvement category looks for specialists and looks for differentiation, right? So we are a specialist. Now, what does a specialist truly bring to the table? The specialist brings to the table the fact that they need to have a wider variety. They need to provide a better experience. They need to do that at better prices. And they need to do that with immense product knowledge. And I think those four are the things that we have built around ourselves, which you could, so to speak, call moats, right? Which help us, let's say, keep our business in an advantage position, irrespective of who else is there. And I think that's the way we've always approached it. So if you think about it, I mean, we work with unorganized merchants, right? Most of the products that sell on typical horizontals tend to be branded products. Now, furniture in India is not branded. So therefore, let's take a basic thing like quality assurance. Quality assurance is actually Pepperfry's responsibility. It's our responsibility that we need to put the processes in place such that quality is standard, even though we are a marketplace, right? It's not a problem that you face selling mobile phones or digital cameras. No. Think about a simple task like merchandising, getting a product live on site, getting an electronics product live on site, images are available, attributes are there, all of that. The chances of getting a furniture product live on site in India, the odds of us being the first ones to get that image ever into the virtual world are very high. And so therefore the degree of merchandising and the kind of, let's say, integration of merchandising you need to bring is vastly superior to everywhere. And then of course you have the supply chain. I mean, it's, horizontals have great supply chains. They have, extensive reach, but it's typically a guy on a bike carrying a bag. Now, a guy on a bike carrying a bag can do many things and carry many things, but a bed or a dining table or a sofa becomes tough for the person to do. So you're talking about a specialized infrastructure required for deliveries. So I think all of these things are hallmarks of a specialist, and that's what we bring to the table.
I like how you put it. So it's essentially the intersection of a high involvement category and a specialist. One question that I always think of, Ambareesh, this was something I had asked Deep Kalra and Sanjeev Chandani as well, that when you're building a vertical business, it's actually very hard to stay focused because there'll always be these distractions, there'll always be this noise, there'll always be this market, this competition. You've done that commendably well all these years. What will be your advice to entrepreneurs who are thinking about taking their vertical business to the next level? About one, being focused, and two, signing up for a really long time, because that's when true value gets built.
So firstly, stay focused. I mean, it's actually, my advice would be, it is super important for that to happen. There are many things in life, there'll be many conversations, there'll be many points of view which might divert you from what you want to do. But as long as you're clear as to what your vision for your business is, stay focused on that vision. So it's almost like, one of the things that I always thought especially over the last, as Pepperfry was evolving and I wanted to make my choices, I said, if something's got electricity going through it or it's got a plug, I don't want to do it. Right? So it's one way of defining it. I'm not, for any intents and purposes, saying that that's the only way or the right way to do it. But you have to be clear as to what that focus means in fairly simple terms. That focus cannot be so everybody should have a really grand vision. But that grand vision should be able to translate into fairly simple steps which you're able to communicate across the organization such that the entire org stays focused, right? And I think so, therefore, focus is super important. I also think that as an entrepreneur, you should take everybody's advice. You should listen to everybody. But you eventually are responsible for your own business. And therefore, you have to make the choices that you would want to make as your own business. That would be my fundamental advice.
And then what's your view on profitability versus growth? At what point,
both.
Which one?
Always both.
And both is such a hard response. Like it's really hard to do that.
There are two parts to the financial architecture of business, right? The first part is, do you make money on everything you sell?
Yes.
Right. So let's call that unit economics. And then the second piece is, all the overheads. Let's say people, payroll, etc., etc. You, as a business, the fundamental piece of getting unit economics where you make sizable amounts of money, you should be doing from the get-go.
Yes.
You could be in your first month of operation or your 10th year of operation, doesn't matter. You should be making tons of money on a unit economics basis. After that, if you got that right, it's only a matter of time before all the overheads get subsumed and the amount of money that you make selling products actually covers up all the costs that you incur afterwards. So I don't think it's a choice. I think growth with good unit economics is what results in profitability.
Sure. Yeah.
So to me, it's actually a logical extension.
Yeah. So it's not a goal; it's a natural outcome.
It's an outcome, right? Because if you're making a lot of money selling products, and then you sell a lot more, you're making a lot more money. And therefore, that money gets settled off against all the overhead costs that you have. So if you have growth, you will, in a well financially architected business, growth will lead to profitability. And I think, therefore, it's not a contrary goal.
One more thing, Ambareesh, that you've done extremely well is adopted the entire franchisee model. Because it's like when you're setting up this, why would you do it always on your own? But it's not easy to get a franchisee partner, and it takes a lot to just set that process up. Walk us through that and how.
So the way we figured was that there are parts of India which we don't know as well as a local entrepreneur would. And so therefore, for our business to do well, we need to get local entrepreneurs on our side. So our requirements, and I think that's what one should take care of. It's a franchisee setup is not a financial decision. It's a how do you run the business there decision. So what we look for typically is franchisees who are willing to invest their own personal time, who would spend time in a particular store. If it's only doing the capex or putting in the money, hey, we can do that, right? A person who is let's say in Hubli, where we have a franchisee, knows Hubli way better than anybody sitting out of Bombay or Delhi or Bangalore ever is going to. And if that person is on your side and propagating your brand, your chances of success in a smaller town are much higher. And that's what we are banking upon.
Thank you so much, Ambareesh, for being part of this episode. With this, we come to an end of yet another episode, Building It Up with Bertelsmann. This season, we've also created the video output of all our podcasts, which you can now check and access on Facebook. But we're also live on iTunes, on Spotify, on Saavn, on SoundCloud. So please subscribe, join in, and stay tuned for the next episode of Building It Up with Bertelsmann. This is Ankur Variku, your host, signing off. See you all.